Hello and welcome to the Happiness Is podcast with me, your host, Bruce Aitchison, for another in the Samurai series of podcasts. We've spoken to the top man, Terry Sands. We've spoken to Geezer, Mike Friday. We spoke to the ball of energy, Carlin Isles. And now we have a Sevens living legend. This man has done it all, and he's speaking to us from sunny Australia, where he is in lockdown at the moment, but he has given up his time to chat to me, and I am very excited. We have already had a long chat off screen. Is there anything this man hasn't done? He's done it in Hong Kong. I was there. I got to witness it, and he is part of a very select team in Hong Kong that I am keen to hear all about. Samurai Rugby has played a role in his development, and I am excited to hear all about it. This is the one and the only Mr. Ben Gollings. Hello, sir.
Bruce, how are you?
Thank you. I am very excited. I'm hugely honoured. This is brilliant to have you with us.
Not a problem. It's exciting to be on the podcast and talking about Samurai, actually, which I'm we're going to divulge into, but it's an interesting topic.
Well, on my little bit of research that I did, you played sevens at school and were pretty successful. Now, thinking back to sevens at school, we're not too far away in age, although you look a good 10 years younger than me. Sevens was kind of that thing tagged on the end of a 15s season, and coaching of sevens then was really just, is there a fast guy you can throw it to and hopefully get some space? So what was it like playing sevens at school and having early success?
A bit like you explained it, to be honest with you. Yeah, well, I went to school in Dorset, Camford, and we weren't a well-known kind of rugby school, but we played 15s on the circuit there. But then the one year the master decided to put us into the Roslyn Park Sevens, which wasn't a usual occurrence for us. And I think all the planets aligned for us. We had quite a good seven, a good mix, and we just seemed to keep winning games as you go through the 2 or 3 days. And then we ended up playing one of our big rivals in the final and winning it. And, ultimately, yeah, there was absolutely no structure or kind of game plan. It was just keep ball passed around and get it to the quick guys and run. So I was one of those back then. So, and that for me really kind of springboarded what was to be, but a fantastic memory. And, I think that tournament in itself's gone from strength to strength, isn't it? So, yeah, it was very different back then as to what it is now.
And you can't possibly have been able to look into a crystal ball and seen what was to come for you and for sevens.
No, I mean, I was still pretty young when we won it because I was playing up in the seniors. I think I was around 16, just going 17. So that age group prior to your senior years. And it was just all unexpected. Rugby really only just started going professional in the 15s world. And I remember after the tournament kind of being hit up by a couple of, I guess what you'd call scouts back then. They were probably the academy managers. And they said, would you be keen? And I was like, absolutely, but I'm still at school and only young. They're like, yeah, we'll come and contact you again in a year or so's time. And so that really did kind of start the ball rolling for me. And sevens, not that I would have thought sevens would have played such a big part. I guess it all started there and has played a big part right from the word go.
And you leave school with the ambition of becoming a professional rugby player?
Well, I actually kind of went semi-professional in my last year. So I went, I got a contract with Gloucester. And so in my last year at school, I would travel between home and Gloucester. And I never actually made like a first team debut back then. I played in the second team and I played a lot for the Colts. However, when I did finish school, I decided to take up the contract with Harlequins. It was a bit more local to me and it was a fresh start. So I started there and I literally, the day school finished, I packed my car up and drove to London to join Harlequins, which, at the time was a dream come true for me. And also to be surrounded with some of the players that were in that side at the time was just, I was kind of a bit awestruck and took me a while to adjust, but it was certainly a good experience.
And there wouldn't really be people to tell you how it would happen because professionalism was fresh then.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, it was not. There was kind of, you had your Colts set up as it were, but they were still very amateurish. The Colts setups. It was really your first team squads that were the professional ones. So for me, it was yeah, it was going from a small pond into a big pond, but then quite a deep one, really, when, 18, 19 years old, you're running around with the likes of Zinzan Brook and Keith Wood and Jason Leonard, and I think even Will Carling was still in the squad at the time. So I was kind of like, okay, I watched you guys playing a lot of rugby on the TV, and now I'm here running around with you. But I think, it is different, and now there's a bit more of a process, but I wouldn't change it. I think I certainly grew up pretty quickly, put it that way.
Were you brave enough to speak to Zinzan Brook?
Yeah. Well, I remember it was myself and another player, a hooker. I remember in one training session, we were one of the early training sessions, and it was a contact session, and I think we were doing a bit of 2-on-1 or 1-on-1, and this young hooker's gone and dummied Zinny and run through and said, Zinny, if you don't, Zinny, he was just the most competitive trainer, which was obviously why he was such a good player on the field. And the next one, he just pointed at him and he goes, I've got you, and absolutely demolished him. There's no taking that dummy twice. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to stay friends with you and avoid you at all costs. Just a man mountain of a guy. But yeah, I mean, someone to learn off in terms of how to play the game.
And what did you learn from guys like Zinzan Brook, Keith Wood, Jason Leonard that was helpful when you became that more experienced player and a young kid comes into the group?
I think the great thing about it was that they grounded you. There was a bit of that old schoolism, but it wasn't a kind of a bullyish side of things. It was teaching you traits that you needed to grasp early on, which was, in every training session, train hard, make sure you're putting in more effort than anybody else. And then from the likes of, Zinny in particular, he was just somebody who would never let a ball land on the floor. He'd be doing goalkeeper dives to make sure he let a ball stay off the floor. And you just saw that kind of commitment and competitiveness come out. And Keith as well. I mean, Keith was brilliant. I was known as the little Smurf to Keith. But again, just somebody who, not just by what he said, but by the actions he took, body on the line and the skills he produced. And then Jason was brilliant, many years with Jason, and just the ultimate professional in terms of how dedicated and disciplined he was to keep himself in the condition he needed to play the game for as long as he did. So, I was really fortunate to rub shoulders and learn off those guys.
So the ambition then was to play for England at 15s and do great things.
Yeah, it was. I think you grow up. That's one of your big goals, and I was really fortunate to kind of jump into the first team quite early and get some runs, and things started to build quite nicely from there, really. And I had a goal of wanting to. I got an England A cap, and I was involved in and around the squad early on in 2002, 2003. But an injury kind of provided a bit of a setback, and I never really kind of made it there. It was a pretty heavily competed side at the time, which I look back and it was a shame in a way, but I can't complain with the journey in which rugby took me on when that was happening and then post that, really.
So you get a shoulder tap and you're asked to play sevens. What goes through your head then?
It was really interesting. One of the first tournaments, I didn't know what to expect, if that made sense. So I think the big kind of sevens influence at that time outside of Roslyn Park was we played the Middlesex sevens. And so Quins, the 1 year I played with Quins, we had to qualify. So we went and played the qualification, and we did really well. We killed the qualification and got into the main one. And then in the main one, that was a real step up, big experience in Twickenham, as where they used to play it. And we came up, I think it may have been in the quarterfinal against the Penguins, which had the likes of Serevi and Thao and all of these top guns. And we narrowly lost, but you kind of got that little bit of an experience as to what sevens was like, playing some of these guys who ultimately, I'd say, the likes of Serevi, who was a bit of a specialist at it. But then my next one was in France, playing with England. And again, another step up, international rugby. And you then rub shoulders with the Samoans, the Fijians, all of those different teams. And it was a tough, gutsy game back then. We only had 3 substitutes. So 2 guys would never even strip up. and it was physical. There was, you look back at it and there was some real physical action, a good few kind of altercations and punch-ups because there was no love lost between teams. It's all kind of cleaned out now, but I kind of stood there as a youngster just going, wow, this isn't kind of what I expected, but it's quite exciting at the same time. I think even Geezer was playing at that point as well, which is was quite cool.
Yeah, a lot of people now have only known Mike Friday as a coach and forget that he was a player, because we've got a generation of supporters and rugby watchers now who just know Mike Friday as the frowning coach over the top of those glasses.
Yeah, well, Mike and I have a cool background, because we actually we were roommates with the England Sevens team. He was actually captain at the time. He was 9, I was 10. And we then he ended up moving from Wasps to Quins as well. So we spent quite a bit of time playing in, I would say, my early years, his latter years, prior to then him moving into coaching.
And what was the relationship like when he became your coach? Did that change things?
Well, I think the good thing with Mike is he's really integral, and you've got to draw a line between mates and player when it's a coach, and he did that really well. He pulled us into line a few times, but in general it was a good relationship, and I think we learned a lot from him, and he gave us the freedom to play, which was good.
And playing for Samurai, off camera we were talking about some of those happy days. What was that experience like?
Really good fun, actually. I think what was nice about it back then is you were able to have the seriousness of the 15s, which was going professional, and then you could go away and play the 7s, which was still, I say amateurish, but it was serious, but had that fun element to it as well, which is what 7s was all about, really, and that kind of touring element. And in the early days, we had some fantastic tours. I think my first one was to Lisbon, and we had a cracking squad, and I can't actually remember if we won it or not, but I just remember it being a good time and bonding well with the players. And then one later on was Vegas, and I don't think any of us really knew what we were in for. And we got there and decided to Vegas, and then we ended up playing the final at 2 a.m. in the morning. Which you could only do in Vegas, right? And it was just bizarre, yeah, because it was so hot as well. I mean, I think we were thankful it was 2 a.m. because it was too hot to play in the day. And where the fields were, there was like one stick tree and no shade at like 45 degrees. So, but just blending that on-field, off-field experience with a really good group of guys was a fantastic memory for me. And that was the kind of the early days. And then latterly, Terry was fantastic in. If I needed a tournament to prep myself ready for, say, playing some of the international stuff with England, he would provide that opportunity. And I remember playing in Darwin, in what they call the hottest 7s, which was fantastic preparation for me, because I went straight from there basically to Wellington, and that year we actually won Wellington. So just those side of things that we were able to get involved in the team, and it was a really high level of rugby, which kind of set you up ready for the international side of the game. And it's not just myself, but there's been a lot of players that have been able to enjoy that experience.
And it's such a different thing with your professional team. You spend all week together preparing for performance. In an invitational team, you meet 2-3 days maybe at best before a tournament. What's the dynamic like trying to stick a game together with guys you might never have met before?
It was interesting, actually, but I think at the same token really emulates 7s, because in my view 7s is about being adaptable and thinking on the fly pretty quick. So, but it was great to be able to get somebody from New Zealand with their experience. I remember we had a couple of the Kenyan guys come in. We'd have a couple of Australians. We'd have some Europeans. Myself would be in there. So we had this great blend. And I think the real key was just playing on everybody's strengths. So your game plan was based on who was on the field, So if you had a Collins and Jira coming on, it was like, okay, well, let's play to Colin. He's on the wing. We use the speed. If we had a couple of the Fijians on, if they were the forwards in particular, the likes of a Damu, get the ball to him in the kickoff. Let's win kickoff. Myself, playmaker in the middle, that type of thing. Then you just start to gel. And I think the good thing is back then you would have a couple of games which you'd be able to just kind of blow the cobwebs out and probably blow a few beers out as well. I think it was really good because it taught you to, you know, to be tough, to tough it out, you know, to be resilient, and you know, there was kind of no excuses. You were there to perform, so you had to make sure that, you know, cometh the hour, you were on, and I think that was one of the fun parts about it.
I love invitational rugby. I love how it brings people together, and you have to bond quickly, otherwise it's going to blow up on the field and off the field. When you then go somewhere, especially with samurai, I don't know if you do this, but you play samurai spotting. He's a samurai. He's a samurai. They're a samurai. They're a samurai. How often have you been in a hotel on that roadshow of World Series and you're having a coffee with somebody that maybe you played with in Darwin, or you played, and you just start harking back to that memory?
Many a time, and I think it was good for me. I mean, from my personal perspective, it was really nice because when you're on the road a lot with your own team, it gave you that connectivity with other teams, so that post, you know, you've been out on the field and had a big bash. Post it, you're able to spring up those conversations and relate and be able to have those stories and enjoy that time as well as what you were doing and being there for, which was the serious stuff in the international rugby. So, yeah, no, I still do. You know, I go to Hong Kong every year and I go and watch the tens, and you go and catch up with Terry and he's there with his tens. But then, you know, half the other teams are full of guys that have all played for Samurai and know the experience. You know, he's done a fantastic job of, you know, using that team to be a real springboard. And
I love Hong Kong. We were talking before. I lived there for 4 years, and as a Scotsman arriving in Hong Kong, the first 3 bloody tournaments I went to, England won. I might as well have been in London as well. Being in Hong Kong and England winning 3 on the bounce, it was ridiculous. What's Hong Kong like as a winner?
I think, you know, as a winner and as an Englishman and a winner, there was kind of, for me, there was nothing that really beat it in sevens. I've got to be honest. It was, you know, we won many other tournaments that all had their own flavour, but that one was particularly special. You know, there was a huge expat support, which, to be honest with you, I never really realised until I went there for the first time and played. But every one of those wins is pretty special, and you know, the crowd are fantastic. And I think when you see that crowd when there's been an English win, it's just up another notch or another level. I mean, even the Fijians, they get involved, and there's a whole lot of respect for it. But yeah, it's the one place that I have to say, one, I enjoyed winning there, and two, I remember them greatly.
And the whole week builds up to, we used to have, it was called the Country of Origin tournament on the Sunday before, where we all went to Aberdeen and played for our countries of origin thrown together. And then you had the Kowloon Tens, which was a social one, the Football Club Tens, which you've already said. And being at the Football Club Tens, having played in it and coached in it, it's a bloody high standard. And it's great when you see the guys who are playing at the weekend, they're there strolling around. Did you do a bit of talent spotting when you were there?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of teams have pulled players from out of the tens, and not just in sevens, but in 15s as well. I mean, it wasn't just talent spotting. From an England perspective, we used to use it to actually look at players, give players a run and an opportunity that were close to the side. You know, and if at all you had any injuries, then that person could pretty much be brought straight in. And I remember playing for Samurai a while after I retired in the tens, and I got to say, it was no mugs game. I mean, it was pretty ferocious to say the least. And I think, again, it's one of those games that's really developed. It's you know, it's pretty cool. But again, it's just the atmosphere it creates. It's such a fun, enjoyable party type atmosphere that's really hits the right notch. And so, yeah, I get down there quite a lot now, and I think players quite like using it to be able to go and switch off in the week and just go and watch a bit of rugby, catch up with a few friends before they get into the serious stuff.
The last time I was there, Nate Ebner was playing for Samurai when he was making his play for sevens, and it was funny because he was almost anonymous. You know, if that had been in a small town in America, people would have mobbed him, but he was there playing for Samurai out of his normal environment. But it was awesome to see him there, and you know, the Fijian team were floating around Osea Colin was there wandering around. The Fijian boys were there, and having that, I think you used the word connectivity. Although you were stars, you were quite approachable. You were within reach of us normal people.
Yeah, look, I think that's the beauty of Hong Kong, and in particular sevens. But there is that blend. I mean, you go to Hong Kong on the week of sevens, and it's the who's who of rugby. You know, you've got, you know, I think I walked into one box and Richie McCaw and Dan Carter were in there. Like I had no idea until I'd been in there. But you know, they're all there enjoying what it is. But again, like you say, very approachable. It's like it just provides actually an opportunity for players to be able to go there and relax and enjoy the environment. And I think the fans strike a good chord as well, because they're there to enjoy themselves. I know the players are there to enjoy themselves. So it's a really good mix, and you get that the tens and the sevens. Well, primarily all the tens just roll into the sevens post their final game, I think. So it's a great blend that they have there. And I did the Kowloon tens as well, and that's just another level of socialism. It's quite good fun.
Yeah, that's my club. Got Mighty Kowloon. That's my club. Yeah, but I'm still. Bentos has promised he's going to play in that, but he's never actually made it for reasons we won't go into now. Now, Hong Kong is a special place for you, and you're going to be too humble, so I'm going to bring it up. You are in the Hong Kong Magnificent Seven. So when Hong Kong had its 40th anniversary, they picked the all-time best seven, and there's one Englishman in it, and it's you. How massive an honour was that?
Huge, and I have to say, really unexpected. And I think you just have to look at the other names in that list. And for me, I think it was probably the only other Northern Hemisphere player in it as well. So it was really special, and to be kind of held in the regard of the other guys that were there, Alomu, Serevi, I think it was.
Right, I'm not gonna embarrass you. I'll tell you the teams. So let's look at these names. We've got Ben Gollings, along with we've got Christian Cullen, Eric Rush, and John Olomu. I mean, if you're picking a sevens team, absolutely. David Campese, who, if that's Bill McLaren's all-time favourite player, he's got to be in there. Serevi, and then Johnny Jiang, who was China's best ever sevens player, rapid, quick, could kick, could distribute off both hands. Johnny was a class act, and Ben Gollings. Do you pinch yourself on moments like that?
I do, and I also pinched myself when I was there, standing next to them. You know, I got to play against most of them. There was a few there was two or three that I didn't. But yeah, to be able to catch up, to talk, to walk around the stadium, to hear them share their stories of their Hong Kong's experiences was just fantastic for me. And you know, it was a very proud moment for myself, and one I will remember. And you know, I got to thank Hong Kong and what Hong Kong is for the fantastic memories that were created there over a decade plus of playing rugby. And I think I've only missed a couple since as a spectator, which has been quite good too.
Yeah, I bet you've got some memories there.
But I don't think anything kind of, for me, you know, a special moment to jump in there was in 2006, and we were going neck to neck with Fiji in the final, and the last play of the game was ridiculous, but I ended up being there at the right time, right place, right time to score the try. Then realising I still had the kick to go, and I think there's no special moment when I didn't hesitate. I just stepped back and banged that kick, and the beauty is you get to kick it into the south stand, and there's probably there's no other stadium or stand quite like it in the world, to be honest with you. I think in any other sport, and you just see them. You see jugs of beer going everywhere, costumes going everywhere, and you know, again for me, it's a picture that'll stay in my mind for a long time. But again, it wasn't just the winning; it was just seeing that moment as well, which emulates what Hong Kong is.
I love how you mentioned Lisbon. You remember it, you loved it, but you can't remember if you won. And that's been a theme. Whenever I've spoken to anyone, we make this big deal about winning. But actually, if I was to ask you the results of games you played in, I bet you can only remember 3, 4, maybe half a dozen at the most, but you'll have hundreds of memories from these things. One of the questions I've always wanted to ask, I lived in Hong Kong, I was involved in the Sevens, I was actually a sighting commissioner one year, but I've stood in the South Stand when you've come round and you've had to warm up in that tiny little space in front of the South Stand. How on earth do you concentrate with that going on behind you?
To be honest with you, I think, again, it's one of the fun things. It's something that kind of relaxes you in a way, because, you know, the Hong Kong Sevens Stadium is a bit of a cauldron. It's a pressure cooker when you're out on the field. But it's quite nice to, you're focused in your warm-up, but then just to be able to take that breather and kind of absorb it. Just for me, I quite enjoyed it, relaxed it, and you kind of do a bit of sightseeing and see if you see anyone in the crowd. And I mean, it was brilliant. You know, I remember warming up in the 2002 final. It was belting down with rain, and we were at that far end, and by that time you really didn't need to warm up. I think we were just stretching on the metal handrail balustrades, just kind of taking in the whole site. So it was just hilarious, just seeing some of the sights and some of the jokes. And you know, I can turn around to a couple of the players and said, "Look, I think, you know, we're ready. We're warm. These guys have set us up nicely." So I think it's just great fun, and it's always done in good taste. And some of the things that are said as you're walking around are hilarious.
Yeah,
I can't go into too much detail with some of it, but yeah, it is fantastic. It's actually one thing where I've never actually set foot in the South Stand myself.
Oh, really? All right. Anybody in Hong Kong that's listening to this, I'm sending this straight to Robbie McRobbie. That has to be rectified as soon as the Sevens is back up and running. Ben Gollings in the South Stand.
Yeah, I've not done it. I know I've got to, but I think I'd definitely get in fancy dress to blend in.
Yeah, absolutely. Full England kit, and people go, "Who do you think you are? Who are you?"
I'm in disguise.
Now, I spoke to Geezer about this, and I've spoken to other Sevens coaches about this. In the 15s game, there's maybe a team of coaches and management and support staff, and you're in the same place and you have a base, and the relationship is unique to that situation. You then travel around the world where you're on flights and in airports a lot. You're then in the same hotel as all the other teams. The relationship with the coach and the player in a Sevens squad is quite different. Purely even if you just look at numbers, there's 13 players to one coach, so the ratio is much smaller. How do you see that as how important is that? Has there been any moments where you've needed them to be more than just your coach?
Definitely, yeah. I think there's in my experiences, the Sevens atmosphere is, how would you say, it's a lot more personal, not the right word, but it's very close knit, and it has to be. You live, sleep, and eat and breathe in each other's pockets for a long time. Like, not to say you get a similar atmosphere when you go and do the 15s element on a tour base, but it's very different to your normal regular rugby. And I think it was really important to have that ability to have that player-coach relationship, but then also in other environments, it's almost like friend and player relationship as well. And you know, the one I experienced very early on, who I thought did a really great job with that, was Joe Lydon. He was a fantastic people's person, players person, and he really struck that chord really well with us as players. And I really enjoyed that kind of, I say intimate side of knowing your coach that well, as well as kind of the coach that would then be there trying to get you ready for tournaments. And I do think there is a subtle difference, because, as I said, you're with each other so much more of the time, and in a small environment, you really got to have that open, honest relationship. And I think it's two ways. So, you know, I quite like that about the Sevens environment. And it's not just to say with the coach. I think over the years got to really know well the managers, the physios, and those others within the small management group that would come in and be a part of our group. I really enjoy that. And now as a coach, I have to make sure as well that I do the same thing. and you've got a line, but there is that real openness and kind of an enjoyable side with it.
And how much do you love coaching?
I love it, actually. It's been, you learn so much as a player. You think you know what you need to be doing as a coach, but the coaching is a completely different journey, right? And I've learned so much from being a coach and some of the teams I've coached, and the challenge is fantastic. And again, performance and everything else aside, just working with different people and seeing them develop, seeing them grow, seeing how you can have a positive impact and influence on their lives has been amazing. And one of the ones that was for me was just completely left wing was when I coached the Chinese team and the women's side in particular. Like, language barrier, culturally so different, but just learned so much off them and had a completely different fun experience to what you would do if you were with a different side.
And your life has taken you to a heap of different countries to play, but you've been in Sri Lanka, you worked in the USA, you've been in Japan, you're in Aussie, New Zealand, China. Where's home?
Good question. I certainly know one thing. COVID's taught me I miss traveling. Look, I think home is always it will be the UK, but I think with my time in rugby, both as a player and as a coach, one of the things I've been very fortunate with has been that ability to travel and to live and experience the different cultures and what rugby has to offer. And blessed in terms of the experiences I've had. I went to Sri Lanka, and I had no idea about kind of the rugby history that was there. You think Sri Lanka cricket, and I went there, and they're getting like 10,000 people to watch a school game of rugby, and you find out they've had a 100+ year history of playing rugby, which is I would never have known if I hadn't have had that opportunity to go there. And similarly in China, although it's seen as a very new sport, there's still a lot of rich history within the Chinese element of rugby. Hong Kong obviously talks to that in terms of the expat side of it. And the US was fantastic, and it's great to see really where the US and rugby is. Where Mike's taken that team, but then with the MLR and seeing how this rugby's developed in these other nations has been quite fantastic for me.
So you get a phone call from the US, or you get a phone call from somewhere, come and coach us. How much thought goes into it? Do you jump at the chance, or is there some barriers in the way now?
I obviously my wife and I we discuss it, and kids come into the factor now as they start to grow up. You need that stability, but I think both her and I love that ability to travel and experience new places. So if it makes sense, and it's an opportunity, I think you can provide one side of life with stability and that side, but you can also then provide an experience which is invaluable as well. So, and almost when the kids are young, then that's not such a bad thing. Although I've got a bit of a spread now from 18 down to we're due our baby in Jan 2022, so it's gonna be quite exciting.
Good grief! You've not wasted any time. Yeah, COVID. You had to find something to do during COVID, didn't you? So a young player calls you up and asks you for advice. What do you think about becoming a professional sevens player? What would you say to them?
I would say what a fantastic opportunity. They're even greater now as they were when I was playing, and I think we've just seen that with Tokyo and the Olympics, and how amazing sevens is in the Olympics. And as a player, if you make the international side of it, you've got a Commonwealth Games, a World Cup, and an Olympics to be involved with, as well as the World Series, which is just growing from strength to strength. But then outside of that, you've got the ability to, as I experienced, to go and play in all these different countries. And there's a lot of opportunity springing up where sevens is the main opportunity, so if you're really wanting to pursue it, I think go for it. It will provide you with a fantastic experience, and you'll have a many lasting memory along the way.
And a kid calls you up and said, I've been asked to go and play for Samurai, what's your advice?
Definitely do it. I think the beautiful thing is everybody's welcome in a Samurai jersey, and like anywhere, as long as you put in the effort, you play well, and I say you play well, you put in the effort, you work hard, and I'm sure that'll lead to playing well. You'll get a lot of reward having played with Samurai. And I think the great thing about Samurai is the respect it's built up over the years, and the credibility it's created, and also the connectivity, so that when you go and play in Samurai, people will be watching, and if you perform well for Samurai, that's a springboard to your next opportunity. And there's plenty of name that has played for Samurai and had that springboard provided for them.
That's a pretty good way to finish. It's almost like Terry's been on the phone.
Well, I can't remember all the stats, but there really has been, and it provided me with that opportunity and that exposure, and that's really all you can ask for in that regard.
Awesome.
As well as a really good tour.
Yeah, they do tours very well, don't they? They do them very well. Ben, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for giving up your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I really hope that I get to speak to you again in future about all things Samurai and all sorts of other nonsense when you're able to get on a plane again.
Yeah, Bruce, it's been fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. Great to speak to you, Ben. All the best.
Cheers.
What an absolute legend, and anybody who speaks with so much fondness of Hong Kong is my kind of guy. Ben Gollings, done it all for England, done it for Samurai, been all over the world, and still has those very, very fond memories of what the game has given him. I hope you've enjoyed listening. If you have, check us out on Apple, Acast, and Spotify. You can watch the video on Facebook and YouTube. Leave us a review, tell your friends. This has been the Samurai series with me, Bruce Aitchison, your host from Happiness is Egg-Shaped. All the best, and I look forward to speaking to you again very, very soon.